Here we have another explanational video of an Ashtanga yoga practice this time. So Ashtanga Vinyasa yoga, as it's called, Ashtanga Vinyasa is the full name, often abbreviated to Ashtanga, is one of the more intense forms of a yoga practice. This video that we're watching is just a slightly easier modified variation of the full Ashtanga Yoga series. So you may think, oh, it's not too difficult. But if you then were to maybe Google and go online, go onto YouTube and type Ashtanga Yoga, it might be a completely different experience. But this form of yoga, again, was derived from Hatha Yoga. So a lot of these postures are very similar to what you'd find in a Hatha Yoga class, except from they just slightly modified them and slightly changed the names of them, and just so it didn't seem like it was exactly the same thing. This is what made it a bit more unique. And then this practice became very famous, actually, because it was like the first sort of westernized style of yoga. What I mean by that is this was like the first kind of systematic, like organized yoga class where it was just like the same set of postures that you did, and it was just the kind of same logical, repetitive class, which gave people the opportunity to start to learn postures in yoga. They then started to combine that with focused gaze points called dristis. Also, they put in main focus on the breath, and this became very, very popular because it turned a yoga practice into a meditation practice. It was when you were so involved with where you were looking, what you're doing, how you're feeling, every single little aspect of your mind and body was super dialed in, which put you into that very present moment state. So this is what made it quite unique. And obviously, a lot of the postures that you see are just like quite cool postures or quite fancy. So it became very cool. People thought, oh wow, this is really fun, really challenging, and it's not like I'm just doing lots of boring postures, holding them for a long time. Within the Ashtanga yoga practice, you do only hold a posture for about 5 breaths, and then you move to the next one and the next one and the next one. So it can be quite intense because you are moving your body through about like 50 different postures within the sort of hour to hour and a half. And therefore, I would say that it is not highly recommended for beginners, especially if you're someone who is like totally new to yoga but also quite stiff. I would say definitely stay away from this practice. But if you're someone who was maybe like a gymnast or a dancer or someone who's very sporty and naturally quite flexible, then I would recommend you to try this over other slower forms of practice because you find that it suits your needs a little bit better. However, one of the best things about this practice is that because it is very repetitive, you do the same postures and everything is to the same kind of standard, you really get to see progress. A lot of the times in a yoga practice, we do one class one day and it's totally different to the next class the next day, and we're doing all these different postures, and we kind of just feel like we're randomly doing one thing and another. Whereas within our Ashtanga yoga practice, you always get to see, how you get in with this posture, how deep you got into this pose. And it does give you that kind of feedback. It's like that constant feedback of knowing that you're kind of going in the right direction. The only limitation to this is that you do find you're always stuck doing the same thing. So if you are someone who kind of gets bored of doing the same thing over and over again, this is definitely not the practice for you. This practice really, really works on your mind. A lot of times before you've even started the practice, because you know exactly what poses is coming, you know how hard it's going to be, you already start to think, oh my goodness, I do not want to do this. This is going to be so hard. I don't have the energy. I don't have the time. Your mind starts to make excuses before the practice even starts. And that is one of the biggest things about Ashtanga yoga, is that when you do practice it regularly, it will start to change the way that you discipline and think and expect your practice to go. So this can be really hard. Really hard part of the practice is just having the motivation, the determination, the drive, and the energy. But if you manage to learn how to integrate this practice into your life, it does give you a lot back from it. It can be really tough to find the motivation to do this, especially if you do not have a teacher. Even practicing online can be extremely challenging, because unless you have someone who's there giving you that hands-on direct feedback, a lot of these postures you can end up learning them the wrong way, or often, especially if you have tighter hips, can lead to quite a lot of injuries. So if you're someone who looks for a bit of a challenge in life and you can have a lot of energy and you like that slightly higher intensity, Ashtanga yoga is great, because it will keep challenging you and challenging you and challenging you until you get to a point where you feel like you could break. And then it's only once we get broken down that we can really learn how to rebuild ourselves back up. So, highly recommend this practice if you already have a good yoga practice, or if you already feel like really good in your body and your mind and your energy. But I would highly recommend skipping this practice, or just doing it maybe like once in a month, just for like a bit of a fun practice or something a bit different. However, if you are really serious about this practice, you can always break it down into small sections and practice some of the poses one day, practice some of the other poses the next day, and start to make it a little bit easier. But in my online course, I have broken it down into just some of the most sort of basic poses, and you just learn on building the basic foundations of the poses you're going to come across the most. So I hope this helps you get a little bit more of an understanding about Ashtanga yoga and the benefits, and why you should or should not practice the style of yoga.